And hello, everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. I'm Pete Bickford. I'm the creator of ComicBase and your host for the next 30 minutes, 50 minutes, who the heck knows. I'm going to try to keep it to an hour this week, and we'll see how it goes. This week, I want to focus on your questions. I usually come in with a bunch of stuff I want to say. This week, I really just want to make it all about you guys. So if you have questions, please post them to the stream, and I will hit as many of these as I can. Some of you have been kind enough to send questions to me ahead of time, and I will hit those first. But we'll be watching those frequently and try to answer, new things as they come in. So just go ahead and post them to the chat. We'll take it from there. And while you're at it, please, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe buttons on YouTube. That does help kind of send out the notifications to the rest of the universe and keep everyone posted on what we're doing around here. So anyway, let's get off to the races. Quick look at the chat here. I'm going to go ahead and hide some of the confusing windows that at least confuse me as we're going on here. All right, Rich says, and let me make sure our keys are working here. Yes, okay, excellent. That went out. PDX Chili, FF15 needs a price check, and we'll talk about price checks in just a bit. A lot, by the way, I love how everyone's sending in the weather reports from where they're at, because man, it's been ugly this last week. The funny thing is, we had no mail, UPS, FedEx, DHL, any kind of delivery whatsoever for almost a week out here just south of Nashville where I am, and today 75 degrees, right before the show, I'm out on my back deck. You're still looking over piles of snow in the corners of some places, but couldn't be a lovelier day. So man, weather, what are you gonna do? All right. Vancouver, Mike reports in. Everyone, Vancouver, 44 degrees, sky clouds. Well, hope the sun comes around to y'all. And sunshine is 60 in South Jersey. Right on. Okay. Gracie, and let's see. Price guys FF15. Not sure which price guy you're referring to, Greg, but again, we'll hit the price guide question in just a sec. All right, so let's get to it here. And hello, John from Alberta. Okay, and Greg says, my question is not all the pictures downloaded on the updates. If I click the box individually and hit download, it may get it, it may not. All right, let's go ahead and hit Greg's question first. I'm gonna jump in line over the price check one. I kind of more to say about price checks, so I want to say that one in a bit more detail. So the deal on downloading is once upon a time. All right, so backing it up. All right, so if you have the archive edition of ComicBase, part of what you say, well, what's the difference between that and the Pro? The answer is 690,000 pictures, and beyond that is a hell of a lot of bandwidth and time spent managing new pictures as they come in. So that's the difference in our cost, and which then becomes part of your price when you do that. But for all that, you get access to all sorts of new covers every week as they come in, as well as better pictures of older covers as we get them and edit them. Now, once upon a time, we would have, I don't know, 100, 200 pictures come down every week. And it wasn't a big problem for us to say, well, look, hey, if you haven't downloaded last week's update, we'll include the last 2-3 weeks worth of updates in every picture download. So if you don't have them already, we'll push them in there with you. For the last couple of years, we've gotten so many pictures. The level of traffic has gotten so crazy that we've had to limit it so that picture downloads encompass only things that are new for that week. So if you miss a week, they're not coming down with the download. If you check for updates, again, you have to hit them manually. You have to go to the individual titles, say download cover to get them, because the big hunk of covers that comes down with each content update, it's so massive now. It's just gigs and gigs. I mean, I want to say we push a terabyte or so every couple weeks in terms of bandwidth. I know it was something where we had to switch internet providers because the bandwidth bill was just killing us, and it's gotten worse. I think 2 weeks ago we had something like 2,200 new pictures in that week alone. So anyway, this is a very long way of saying, if you haven't gotten your pictures in a given week and you go next week and you download them, you kind of miss the train on those pictures. So how do you get the ones from the last week before if you miss them? You really go to the individual titles, highlight the lines, right-click, say download covers, then it'll come down upon demand. And about once a quarter, we also offer a kind of a roll-up of all the pictures in the entire database, so you can You'll fill everything in all at once if you are of a mind to. What I would suggest for everyone out there, if you're not doing it already, is take a moment, go down to Sidekick, and I will show you how to get to that in a moment. Let me go over to it right now. So down here by your clock, and unfortunately it's on a monitor that you can't see right now, but you'll probably see a little arrow pointing up right now, which shows you all your notification area icons. And let me go ahead and bring it up on mine. I don't, unfortunately, when I'm showing you guys this stuff, it's all coming up on my secondary monitor, so I don't get to. This is like the one thing that makes for a terrible, terrible, demo, is I can't easily show you how to pull up Sidekick without switching all my monitors entirely around. But anyway, go down to the bottom right of your computer. Click on that arrow pointing up and look for a little superhero looking dude. And when you right click on them, or I think even left click on these days, choose open and you'll see Sidekick. So Sidekick is our program for managing, as I say, all the scut work in ComicBase. It's all the stuff that's got to get done, but let's face it, it's no fun to do. And the number one of those is downloading your updates all the time. So what I would do is go down here, click the cog icon, and make sure your current database is listed in the databases that it manages right up here. If it's not, go ahead and add it right now and hit save, and then Sidekick will start managing that database. At which point, I'm going to click over here under the schedule. On my computer, for instance, it checks for updates every day at about 6:45 p.m. If there's a new update, it'll go out there, it'll download automatically, and it'll also download the pictures for me. So I'm never going to miss an update because it just Sidekick is always looking for them. I don't need to download them manually for myself. It's just always going to grab them each week. So take a moment, do that, set up Sidekick, and while you're at it, make sure also that you're backing up your database to the cloud, at least weekly is a really good idea. And set those, I've got mine set for 7 p.m., which is like one of the few times I'm not working. But for yours, go ahead and set it for 2 a.m. in the middle of the night. As long as your computer is on and ComicBase is closed, it will download. It'll download your updates. It'll update it'll save your database to the cloud and do just all the futzy stuff automatically, and you don't need to worry about doing that. Anytime you sit down with ComicBase, it'll all be ready to rock and roll. So do that. That's really the best way to go if you have missed an update, and take it from there. Okay, on to the next question. Let's go back to here. Let's see here. Question about the Andre's catalog. We'll talk about that. All right. Equator 4211 says, I have Express version. I want to add pictures of my own. Is that possible? Absolutely. What you can do is, so the pictures, sorry, let me hide some foo here. And go over here. So the pictures in ComicBase are all JPEG files. So wherever you find them from, let me go ahead and I'm just going to show where these are. They're going to live in folders inside your pictures directory, structured after the issue numbers and things like that. So I guess the last thing I was looking at here was Black Hammer Visions, or actually I was just entering a whole ton of new comics. So let's go to say low here. So if I click on low and I show all the pictures, so here's all the issues of low right now. 1-2 is second printing, 1-3 and so forth. And so basically, if you drag them into the appropriate folder, it's going to get added to ComicBase. Now, let's say I've got some pictures that I don't have the picture yet and I want to add them. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some of these out of here, drag them off to the side just to demo this for the moment. All right, so I got rid of a couple issues here. I'm going to go forward and back just so you can see that. All right, I'm missing now the pictures for 1A and 2. All right, so what I want to do now, let me go ahead and clean up my desktop so I can see where the heck I put those pictures just now. Sorry, I've got too many things open on my computer. Let me close some stuff so I can even see what I'm doing. All right, closing that, and okay, got it. All right, so back to this. Come on, where'd you go? All right. Oh man, have I actually managed to move my own stuff off screen? By the way, this is a bonus tip here. If you ever manage to do something stupid like I just did here, if you ever have the data, the thing open, but it's open on, in this case, my third monitor, and it's hard to see, if you hover over the taskbar, go up here and say Move, and then choose any arrow key. It's going to drag right along with your mouse, and it'll magically appear next to where you are. This works for any Windows program. It's not just ComicBase. That's a little bonus tip as we're, watching me be confused about things. All right, so let me go ahead and take some pictures. Let's say I found low number 1A and 2. I found them on the web someplace. I saved them down to my desktop. Now, what you want to do, the only trick here is you got to make sure the pictures are named exactly the same thing as the issue number involved. So if it's the picture for issue number 2, make sure it's called 2 or 2.jpg if you're showing the file extensions like I am. If it is a variation, like in this case it's 1/A for the Newberry Comics exclusive edition over here. Now, one thing about that is you can't have a slash in a Windows file name. So whenever you have a character like that, like a slash where you're not allowed to put it into the file name, just use a dash instead. So in this case it's 1-A. And then just go to the title in question, drag it onto the grid, it copies it into the right place, and it's good to go. So now if you look over here and I show the picture folders, you'll see that it actually made a copy of 1A and 2 in the right place, and the pictures appear. So that's how you would add new pictures. By the way, you also can add not just pictures, but you can add things like you can add PDFs if you have the comic in PDF form. You have CBR files, CBZ files. You can add URLs if you have like a link to it in an online format, or a movie trailer you want to link to the thing and so forth. And all those things, once they're linked to the comic, you can just click on them and that'll open up the original media file. So that's actually kind of a cool thing. That said, even though you can add new pictures of your own to the Express, if you find that you're adding tons and tons of pictures, and that's, I'm assuming your time is worth something, at some point, look for a sale, maybe look for a chance to upgrade to the archive edition, because, if there's a difference between like, I want to grab a few dozen or a few hundred even pictures on my own, and then just the vast amount of time it requires to put together the art library that we've done over, like, what's it been, like 25 years or so, where we've been actively collecting every picture known to man. At some point, factor your own, the value of your time into it, and see if you can't maybe upgrade to the archive if that makes sense to you. That would be my advice. Whenever I'm giving advice like this, yes, I realize there's a self-interest to it, but I always try to say, look, what would I tell a friend? I would tell a friend, if you're spending just dozens of hours grabbing pictures and loading them down someplace, say, maybe it's worth $2 a week, which is what an archive really costs, is an upgrade every year. Maybe it's worth $2 a week to have us do the work for you. But it's your mileage may vary, so make the best decision for you. Okay, on to other things. Agent Camp, please remove your footwear. Duh, what? Sorry. Agent Camp is under the room. There's a very strange discussion going on in the chat here. We'll just let that roll. Do you have the background transparent? I don't. The background of the main app is always going to be, you can never make it fully transparent. What I was doing, what you might have seen on the screen just now, is I took the window and I just dragged it over a bit just so you could see, what was next to it, so I could show the drag and drop. One thing I've done, and this is purely for show, is I've gone and I've taken my own backdrops, because I'm sitting here behind a couple of large monitors, a couple of 27-inch monitors, and it's almost like having a couple of big bright lights, right in your face. And I noticed that you're getting this massive reflection off my eyeglasses whenever that happens. And one thing I could do to make the show just a little bit more intelligible, so you didn't, see this, crazed look of light dancing all over my eyeglasses whenever I'd move my head, is I switched my background to something dark, and whenever I can, I switch the ComicBase to a darker background, just so it's not reflecting quite so much light in my face. So I think that might have been what you're looking at, is basically just the dark background of my screen, so that it's not showing as much foo just in my glasses. So anyway, all right, moving on. Okay, let's get on to the price check questions. So Richard pointed out that he had a question about the value of Fantastic Four Annual number 15, Volume 1. Without looking at myself, I don't know whether we're spot on or not on the price on that one. The general gist on pricing is the way all the prices in ComicBase are set is by default, the price next week is going to be the price this week, unless with the 2.1, God, I think we are now at 2.2 million every week price points that we crunch every week as far as what the rolling market average is of all the comics posted for sale that have sold or that have gone through the auctions, through Heritage Auctions. We're looking at how has the rolling average of all these comics changed over the week. And so basically part of what we're doing every week is just running a rolling average of all this price activity and matching up to the new stuff. And if there's a reason it should have changed by more than the minimum threshold amount. So in other words, if it changed by 3 cents, you're not going to see a price move. But if it's a dollar comic and it moved by a quarter, you'll see a move. If it was a $50 comic and it moved by, $5 or something, you'll see it move. But if it has moved by that point, then you'll see that come out as part of a new price. Now, without looking at that data myself, I don't know whether we're spot on or not on Fantastic Four number 15. But one thing you can do is realize that even though we are driven very much by market data as far as where the prices are, sometimes the market's just weird. I mean, especially when there's a market item that doesn't have a ton of activity around it. I mean, if you look at the market activity around basically any issue of the X-Men, I feel, without even looking at any of them, I feel great about all the prices because I know that there's just thousands of data points pegging the price on those all the time. I mean, they get very hotly traded, and so I feel like if you say what's the price of X-Men number 141, I feel great confidence that that thing is right within a buck. On the other hand, if you sit there and say Fantastic Four Volume 1 Annual number 15, I don't know how many of those come up for sale every day. I don't know. It's certainly a reasonably decent comic, but is it a hot comic? I don't know. Just so anyway, you can have things where the price moves, but it doesn't move in it moves in a way that the price doesn't get reflected right away. One typical one is if you have a comic book that got a little hot. Let's say you discover that there's a character they're going to use in a new movie, and 3 people know about this right now. So the price on eBay, for those 3 people who know about it, might jump from $6 to $20 overnight. Now, if nobody's changed their price on Atomic Avenue or Heritage or anything else like that, and one guy does it and he moves it from seen as an out of the ordinary price bump, we're not going to immediately just average that into the mix. Now, on the other hand, if 3 people start doing that, then suddenly it's like, okay, that's real data now. So we don't want the price to bounce around with just every crazy person who posts things, but sometimes you need a little more activity around an issue than you might see if you're really got a hair trigger on eBay in order for us to move the guide price. So that could be what you're thinking of, or maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just an oddity. I don't know. When that happens, when you say, look, guys, I realize the algorithmic pricing is cool, but we need to have a human look at this. When that happens, what you should do is this. Go to the issue in question. Let me, at this point, show ComicBase again. And let's say I think that the price for low number 1, which right now is $3.99. Let's say I think right now it's $5.75. And by the way, let me go ahead and show the grid here so we can see what's going on there. All right, so here's the graph on low number 1. Let's say, I don't know, it just got optioned for a major motion picture and it really ought to be $20, which apparently somebody thinks it should be $20. And right now I'm just going to click the view available comics and see who that is. Cyberspace Steve has a very high opinion of low number 1, but apparently not shared by at least 5 or 6 other folks who've got the same comic for sale. Anyway, but hey, who's to say, right? As soon as all the other ones sell out, then Cyberspace Steve is going to set the price on this one if nothing else comes onto the market. Anyway, with all that said, let's say that you really think this ought to be a $20 comic book for damn sure, right? Cyberspace Steve is absolutely right on this one. There's no getting around it. It's never sold anywhere else for less, right? At which point, what you should do is click on the comic in ComicBase, right-click, and choose Request Price Check from the menu down here. At which point, we're going to have you fill out a little tiny form like this. And it says, all right, look, it's going for $5.75 right now. I think it ought to be $20. And it'll say, where are you getting your price? Why do you think it ought to be $20? Give us a little something, just so that we know where you're coming from with your perspective and how to judge it. At which point, then the editors will make a project, and this is actually pretty high priority for them to do these things. They'll prioritize this over most other work. Is to say, yeah, no, eBay, it's on fire right now. It's selling for no less than $25 anywhere else, so we think you should bump it. That gets sent over to the editors, and if they'll review other sources of pricing. They'll look at eBay, they'll look at different auctions and things like that from other places we don't normally use, and they'll make a determination as to whether or not they think that the new price is right, wrong, or somewhere in between, and then they'll move the price to the next update. But that gets there's a rocket on those requests when they come in. So use it sparingly. Don't just say like, no, I think that you've got Micronauts number 7 for $3.25 and it really ought to be $3.50. That's not what this is for. But if you feel like no, there's a big move on a number here, or something's way over or way under, that lets you run it straight to a human to get an evaluation on that, and it gets fixed in the very next update. So that's how that works. Okay. Moving on. How are we doing here? Damn, Pete likes it big. What are you talking about? You talking about like the cover price? I have no idea. Anyway, okay. Trading. The trading card market has exploded over the last few weeks. That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer on. I do not follow the trading card market. We looked into it when we were doing ComicBase 2020, because one of the initial concepts for ComicBase 2020 and new collectibles was to add in both sports and non-sports cards into the program. And we looked at the state of the market as of a couple of years ago, and man, it was just grim. It was really hard for us to find. It was really hard for us to find many cards where it was worth the time to enter a single card. There certainly are cards in the world that are like that, but for a program like ComicBase, where you sit there and you say like, look, I'm going to enter in my Magic the Gathering cards. I'm going to enter in my my 1983 Topps baseball, American League baseball cards. Whatever the thing is, you want to make it however efficient we make it for you to put the stuff in. We want to make it so a sensible person entering each card individually is not just being a crazy person counting 3 cents, 5 cents, 8 cents. You want to. It has to be worth the time to do the minimal work. And at the time, man, it was just an absolute implosion. We were seeing just pallet loads of cards being offered for sale for like $100, $200, and it was just maybe things have gotten better. Someone who knows more about that world, chime in. I'm interested in following that. It's just we've had our attention on other things lately, but if the market has turned around and that's suddenly become a different market, then it's worth another look maybe. A ton of box of Marvel Universe cards that was $90 3 months ago and $1,500 now. Crazy. I don't know. Answering Agent of the Camp's question. Yeah, right now you can't add books and magazines. It is a different collectible. They're selling it out. You can even see in some of the working folders we've got. There's, we're ready to start taking on that sort of thing with not them. Like when for trading cards was going to be a pretty big effort on the cataloging sense. So as far as tracking it, not that big a deal from the software side, but I didn't want to jump into it unless there was a real value add for the customers. But let us know in the comments. It's something we've got our eye on. It's not a super active area for us right now, but like I say, it was part of the initial concept with ComicBase 2020, and we could get back to there reasonably easily. It would not be anything like the effort required to go from ComicBase 2017 to ComicBase 2020 in the first place to add some of these other collectibles that we had looked at if we feel like the opportunity is right. In the end, we started with, I think, 9 different collectible categories. We trimmed it down to 3, which is books, magazines, and comics, which all centered around comics. It was really comics, and then the things that sort of spilled over from the sides of those is kind of where that wound up being the best opportunity for us at the time, it seemed. But if you guys have other things that you're super hot for that, frankly, and I'll just say, are willing to put down money for, then let us know. All right. Let's see here. Comic style cards. Yeah, so Agent Camp said, um, so yeah, we were thinking both sports cards and non-sports cards. So comic style cards, and you'd have to, the big dog these days, you'd have to factor in Magic and things like that as well if you wanted to get into that field. But I was even thinking like one of the first things I ever collected as a kid was the original top Star Wars cards from the movies. Because it's funny because I was just in a neck of the country and I was a little kid at the time where it was easier for me to get the cards and relive the scenes by staring intently at all the scenes on the cards before I could even see the movie. And you certainly couldn't just go out and see it 20 times, like you can these days on DVD. But I looked at like, well, what would it cost me today to buy that same set of first series Star Wars cards that I so treasured when I was a kid? And I remember selling off at a comic show, one of the first ones I ever dealt with. I want to say I sold them for like $5 for the whole set, and at the time I looked at it, it was like $35 would have bought me the same set again in mint condition. I'm like, ugh, factored for inflation, they did just fine selling them for $5 or whatever back in the set, in the 80s. So, I don't know. I was hot for the opportunity, but then I cooled. Is kind of where my head went on that one. But I could get hot again. Trading cards fall very nicely into the same metaphor we've got going on for comic books. It was probably a bigger stretch for us to get books in there because some of the things like the idea that things have a series or that they have a number attached to them. Those don't fit as naturally for books as they did for comics. So a fair amount of dancing was required to make even things like issue numbers work right for books, whereas for trading cards, once you've got a series and a card number, it exactly follows the mold of comic books. So from a database standpoint, not a big deal. But I don't want to get into 80 lines of business if we can't execute on them. And right now our dance card is reasonably full, so we'd have to really be convinced the opportunity's there before we wanted to jump into something new right now. If there's a slow day sometime, we're more receptive, but we'll see. Okay, let's see. Don't collect many cards, but mostly just Olivia Berardinus. I never knew how to say her name. I know exactly the cards you're talking about. I want to say back in the early 90s, there was those came out there. Good looking art. Let's see here. Keep it fairly. Okay, Greg. I'm just going to read this out loud. Greg says, I know you'd like to keep a fairly bright line between ComicBase and Atomic Avenue. Do you have any sense to when books and magazines on AA will start to work normally, i.e. like comic book titles? Yes, I do. I'm not at liberty to say it right now. But a lot of the reason that my time is getting pulled away right now for other things is because a lot of it is going into dev work that interfaces directly with with Atomic Avenue. So you're going to see some of this work in the future. You're going to see it first. The ComicBase guys will see it first with related to the mobile stuff, but there's going to be a big update that I'm getting pulled into on the Atomic Avenue end, and that's actively in work. Some things are actually starting to work better already, but you're going to see that shifting in the near future. Greg says, do I add a book or magazine on my end? Do you see it on your end? Not unless you send it to us. So the way you send it to us, and this is related to the price checks, is let's say you've added a brand new title. Like let's say Low is a brand new title I had just added. Right click on it, choose submit new or corrected data, and then it gets sent directly to our editors. And basically everything associated with Low #1 or whatever you highlight. Matter of fact, you can highlight more than one. You can highlight the whole title if you want. Everything about that gets sent to the editors in a form that's very easy for them to process. And including if you have any pictures that you've added that we don't have, or that you have a bigger picture than what we've got, it'll ask you, hey, can we have your picture because we've noticed it's bigger than the one we have. And if you say yes, then that gets transmitted up to us, and we give you, picture submission points. There's a leaderboard to kind of have bragging rights on that one. But anyway, the main part is it gets added to our database. We start tracking pricing on that on an ongoing basis. So you'll get price updates for that as soon as it becomes part of the master. And it also becomes saleable on Atomic Avenue. So those are the main advantages to sharing your content with us is, it basically benefits everyone who uses the program if you do it. Everything gets a little bit more complete, a little bit nicer. And honestly, we couldn't do what we do without a lot of you folks helping us in a lot of different ways. But until you do that, your data is your data. We don't know what you've got until you tell us. Okay. Let's see here. Not liberty to say. Yes, yeah, I know. It's just there are things I control more or less absolutely, ComicBase, and then there are things I don't, and I got to work with the kids over there. And so when they are ready to make announcements, I can talk about announcements. But when it's just sort of like, hi, we need a ton of your time to work on stuff, it's a different question. And they get to control when things get announced on that. So anyway, that's how the Atomic Avenue Foo goes. But as you see, there's a big line between our two worlds. Atomic Avenue is a big source of pricing for ComicBase, and so we're deeply involved with that. But also, every time you're shifting things up and down to the servers, it touches the other system in one way or another, and so I tend to get involved with that interface a lot. And sometimes I'm working on the client of ComicBase very heavily. You see that usually for us, and sometimes I'm just heads down in the back end stuff with all the servers, and that's kind of where my head's been for a while. So anyway, we'll let that one go for now. All right, other questions coming on. Okay, I got a question earlier on about someone that says, I'm getting a database locked error. What's that about, and what do I do about it? All right, so if this has ever happened to you, you launch ComicBase and you would have gotten a message saying something like, I can't clear some temporary tables because the database is locked. What that means, so locking in a database means that another program was trying to manipulate data in the database the same time you were, and because the two people, you don't want to have two sets of hands changing a database at the same time, unless it's very specifically instrumented for that sort of thing. Databases do a thing called setting up a lock. Typically, and with SQLite, it's a lock on the entire database at once. It doesn't have the ability to lock only individual rows in the database like some other databases do. It's one of the things that's not so great about SQLite, but we forgive them because they're lightweight and they're really, really fast. And so, our old database structure, Jet, had it's called row level locking. So you would lock just an individual issue of the table, so you could have 5 people pounding at the database at the same time more easily. Whereas if you're in SQLite, it's going to lock the whole database at once if someone's making a change. But on the other hand, if I could make it so I have a database that runs 2 or 3 times faster than the other one, and it doesn't need to have compacting limits at 2 gigabytes like our old Jet database did, I will take the ability or the inability to have multiple people do, and it says, hey, I'm launching ComicBase, database is busy, and you see that Sidekick is in the middle of doing an update. Just exit out of ComicBase, wait for 5 minutes, let it finish its thing, and you'll be fine. That's the easiest way to go on that. In this particular case, what happened is he had been doing some stuff and had just shut down the program abruptly while it was in the middle of writing large amounts of data. And so it got left in kind of an unhappy state where it said, look, I was in the middle of doing stuff here, and I haven't finished it off entirely, so I'm still picking it up. But unfortunately, because he'd clobbered his machine in the middle of all that, there was no way for it to really pick it up. And so it was still left in the state where, like, I'm busy, but there's no really way to, like, pick up the work. If this happens to you, what you want to do is just basically come up on the easiest way to go is go under here, go File, Save a Copy, make a new copy for database. If it was called Pete's Database before, call it, Pete's New Database. Hit Save, and then what it'll do is it'll take the active data that you've got in your current database, it'll save it to a new database where everything is not in a lock state, open up Pete's New Database at that point, move on with your life. If that does happen to you, do go ahead and update your Sidekick so it's working with Pete's New Database and not Pete's old database or whatever you call the old database, because you don't want it futzing around with your old database anymore, because you're not going to use that one anymore once you've moved on to the new one. Anyway, that's what you would do if that situation happens to you. Better situation is just like when you launch like an Xbox game and it tells you like 1,000 times, when you see the little cursor light going, don't turn off your machine. When you see the busy light going in ComicBase, don't turn off your machine is really the easiest way to go. Databases don't really like it when you do that when they're in the middle of writing. SQLite's very good about not actually destroying your database when that happens, but it doesn't do anything good for it. So if your database is busy, let it finish up if you possibly can. And if you do get in that situation with a lock, that's how you'd move on with it. Okay. Checking with the chat. Let's see here. Greg says, I had my collection updated to the mobile app and then it disappeared. Any idea what happened? Great segue, because that actually lets me, well, lets me sort of answer in a window so I can log into my account, and you guys don't need to see that part. Go to ComicBase.com, profile. Okay. All right. So if you go to ComicBase.com and you go under My Account and then Profile, right? It'll ask you to log in if you do that. But once you've logged in, you'll see a bunch of stuff. Here's all the badges I've won. And yes, no, I also don't have all the badges either. But anyway, down at the bottom, you'll see known databases. All right, and what this is these are all the databases that our servers have ever seen you use with ComicBase. Now, in this case, I've got Pete's inventory database. That's my real stuff. And I've got Livestream Pete's Comics, which is the BS copy of my database that I use when I'm demoing things and I'm going to be destroying them, and I don't want to mess up my real stuff. All right. If your database went away, usually what's happened is it's gone from this list somehow. Now, it's in a way no big deal. All you got, and by the way, if you have extra databases, and this is the question that had been asked earlier, if you're in the mobile app and you see extra databases you didn't care about, what you want to do is go under My Account Profile, go down, find your extra database, and hit Remove, and then that will tell our servers, hey, forget about those old databases. And they'll forget about them right up until the point where you check for sales again, or if you go to Sidekick and you post your inventory again using Save to Cloud. Either of those options will go ahead and magically recreate your database online, and then everything will reappear again. So answering both questions in kind of an inside-out, backwards kind of way, if you had a database that was appearing in the app and it went away, just go ahead, use Sidekick, do a save to cloud from your current database, and it will magically appear in the app again. If you're using the mobile app and you see database, in this particular case, the problem he was having was he was seeing his reports didn't seem like they were updating, even though the collection total looked right. What was really going on is he was looking at the reports for a older database that he was no longer syncing with Sidekick, and so it was never getting updated. In which case, what you really want to do is just go in Sidekick, double check that you're really posting from the databases that you're currently working from over in the settings here, and then when that's done, go into your profile, remove any databases that you're not using, and then just hit save, save to cloud from your right database, and then everything will update and everything will be happy. So that's the long and short version of that question. Let's see here. John says, have to give all your tech guys. Still haven't been able to get the screen share to work on either of my laptops when I run ComicBase 2015. John, give us a little more detail in the chat if you can about what problem you're having getting it to go. The one thing I will say, and the screensaver is the first program we've ever put out that is a Nazi about this, is it's got to be 64-bit. If you're running a 32-bit OS on either of those machines, the screensaver will not run. It just won't. So check your Windows go under this PC, right-click, choose. I'll show it to you over here. So if you go under the Start menu, say PC. Here, let me show it over here. Come on. So if I say PC, and I go to this PC, right-click, choose Properties, and then you should see something. And this is changed slightly with the new Windows 10 20H2 service pack that just came out. You should see something that looks a little bit like this. What you're looking for is the line down here that says System Type, and you want to see 64-bit operating system running on a 64-bit processor. If it says a 32-bit operating system running on the processor, it ain't gonna run. ComicBase will still run, but the screensaver will not. But if you've got a 64-bit operating system running and you're still having trouble, give us a call. We'll figure out what's going on for you. That's pretty much that. Okay, let's see here. Oh, and John says, I checked in the 64-bit. So when you say it's not running, are you saying you're not getting pictures? It's not activating? What's going on? We'll take it from there. Okay, Brian says, speaking of badges, every time I say report to the cloud, I get an earned a badge pop-up, but the badge never appears, and I continue to get the pop-up with each new cloud report save. I wonder if you don't have a, I wonder if you don't have something that is clearing your cookies on you. Check your security software and maybe temporarily disable that. Because typically what happens when you earn a badge is there's a lot of little checks. I mean, there's different things you can do to earn a badge, like having a certain number of comics in your collection or posting a report or doing things like that. When you earn a badge, what it tries to do is when you exit the program, it syncs the badges up. So if you exit the program normally, it says, okay, well, hey, by the way, he's earned the you've posted a report to the web badge. It's called something cool, not the you've posted a report to the web badge. But anyway, when that happens, it tries to contact our server and say, hey, look, this guy just got the badge, and so it updates your account, and then next time you go in there, it should say, well, there's no sense giving it to him again because he's already got that badge. Something about that process sounds like it's not happening for you. Typically, when it's not syncing with the server, typically it's firewall software or security software. But if it happens again, give us a call on tech support. We'll troubleshoot with you. We're always curious about these things. But yeah, you should only get given a badge once, provided you've exited the program normally. If you like bounce out of the program for abruptly or something like that, then it doesn't have a chance to sync the badges with the server, and so every time you do something cool, it'll think you did it for the first time. But that's all I can think of right now. Okay. All right. So next question I had was adding cover to a point issue. Oh, a lot of questions about covers today. All right. So the question came up. How do I add a cover for a 0.5 issue? Well, let's find something with a 0.5 issue in it. Does anyone know one offhand? Did Spider-Man have one? Let's see. Yes, Spider-Man had one. All right, so here's Spider-Man 0.5. Okay. I'm going to do the trick I did before. I'm just going to grab a bunch of things that were here. I'm going to move them out of the folder. All right, so did that. Go forward. Go back. All right. And you see that I'm now missing a bunch of stuff, right? I had covers for all these guys before, and now I don't. All right. So the trick on decimalized issues, and this is actually one thing we did that was halfway clever when we first did ComicBase, is we figured out that issue numbers aren't integers. Because that was right about the point in the 90s where people were starting to get squirrely about them. And they were starting to have things like half issues, and I think the record is a -1, -2, and -3 issues. I think there was an X-Men, not X-Men, but -3. Thanks for that. And then the worst one, of course, were the Infinity issues from Malibu, as well as what was its name? Somebody did a Pi issue. I want to say it was an issue of The Amazing and Cynical Man or something like that, or oh god, it was anyway. Something is one of those indie comics in the time did an issue number Pi, which we're not going to do infinite numbers of decimals in the thing. It's issue number 3.14 as far as we're concerned. But anyway, we did figure out pretty early on that the issue number itself needs to be a decimal. So we did do that. One problem we've got, though, is Windows doesn't allow point as the first character in a file name. And so when you have a decimalized issue, if it's issue 13.5, just call your file name 13.5, it'll take it. If it's issue 0.5, you got to put the leading 0. So you got to basically call your issue 0.5 and then drag it down to the title. It'll pop into the right place. You're good to go. Oh, by the way, as we're demoing this whole thing, I was dragging just normally, which makes a copy. If you hold down the shift key when you drag, and it should show it, if you look down at my cursor right there, you'll see that it's changed form slightly. Instead of a plus, it becomes just, I don't know, what you call it, like just a box. When I do that, then what it's going to do is it's going to move the issues in question and not make copies of them. And so in that case, now I've got the... and now it didn't leave the old ones on there. And I believe there's also a very, very slight bug where if you drag in a -1 issue, it doesn't immediately redraw. I gotta admit, that's a bit of a low priority bug, but we will look into it. It'll redraw when you go forward and back to the title, but that's a real thing as well. If you have a -1 issue, you might need to go forward and back to the title just now to make it show up. All right. Okay. So. Okay. All right. So John says the problem he's having with the screensaver is the screen goes blank, shows the CB superhero guy, says that not enough pictures are found. Please check your settings. All right. What that means could be two things. Number one, make sure you've got the very latest version of ComicBase, which, and let me show you all how to find out whether you've got the latest version of ComicBase. Let's go over here. Where's my mouse? Okay, so if you go on ComicBase.com, all right, the latest version we make you get is version 21.0.1. I don't know, it was like 1300 something when 21.0.1 was initially released. We also do interim builds because we're always, whenever we do anything at all with the program, we'll put out a new build. So if you're really just anxious to get all the very latest stuff, you can get the not required builds right here. And just click on that. You can go to my account and then registrations and download them that way. Or if you go in ComicBase, go up under Setup and then Preferences and check off this box right here, check for interim updates. If you do that, every time you check for updates, it'll tell you whenever we've done anything at all with the program, and you can download it right then and there, and then you'll have the absolute bleeding edge stuff. Now, the obligatory warning on that is stuff that has not been aged like a fine with it. So the good and bad is that this churns a fair amount, in which case, when you launch ComicBase, you'll be downloading updates a fair amount if you've got that checked, but you will get all the very latest stuff. So fine at all. It's stuff that probably came out D7, I believe, is the build as of this morning. And you go to the screensaver, and let me show you how you get to that. Go under your Start menu, type Screensaver, and click Change Screensaver. So here's the ComicBase cover gallery. Go under Settings. Now, in the old one, if you had it set to All, it would never find enough pictures for anything. That's been fixed, but if you had that set and you're running an old version, just set it to something like Comics instead of All Media. That's the easiest way out of that one. Enough to have found some number of pictures. I forget what the minimum is. It's like 3,000 pictures or something. It figures in order to have like a cool screensaver, you need at least that many. In which case, either wander around the program some more until, as you go from title to title, it finds and notices all these pictures. By the way, as I'm going from title to title, look down at, as it draws pictures. I'm getting some areas I apparently haven't been to lately. And you'll see how it shows little icons for just a moment, and then they get filled in with the other icons a little bit more slowly. And you'll see a little spinny thing right over there as it builds the thumbnail for those. And then if I go back to the same title, it hits those fast. But what's really doing is it's finding the original picture and building a size thumbnail so it can display it very quickly when you come back. You see how coming back the same way is much faster. Well, what it's doing at the same time is it's also telling your ComicBase, oh yeah, you've got a picture for Spider-Man from Comics Volume 2, Number 1. Its dimensions are X by X. It's available over here. And that's what the screensaver is looking for when it tries to figure out if you've got enough pictures. So if you play with ComicBase enough, it will eventually fill in enough pictures where it's happy that way. Or you can shortcut the entire process. Go up under the File menu, go to File Tools, and say Rebuild Lists, and tell it to rebuild your pictures list. And while you're at it, if you want to, you can rebuild everything, and that makes everything just all shiny and new. But the pictures list, what it will do is go to every title in your database and find what pictures you have on your machine, and pre-calculate those stats so that they're in your database. The pictures live separate from the database. They tie together. Whenever your database sees that you have a picture, it'll update the information on that picture. But you're free to drag pictures in and out of the database without they're not integral to the database. And so there's different things you can do as you're using ComicBase to kind of sync that up. This is the way to force it to sync everything up. Now, it does take a while. Like even on my machine, I think it takes over an hour. But if you do that, you'll know about every picture there is to know about, and at that point, your screensaver will absolutely be happy. So give that a go if you're still stuck. Okay. things that can change with your window theme. So if you go here under File and you say Theme, you can change to all sorts of different looks for your database. Shimmer, reflect, darkness. I mean, some of them are quite dramatic, some of them less so. But I want to say either Zen or simplistic. I want to say is either silent or near silent because the sound effects go with the theme. So if you're running that one, maybe there's no sound to play. But for all the other ones, yeah, you should hear some kind of click. Yeah, here's grunge theme. Yeah, no, I don't want that. I'm going to go back. We all have our favorites. I'm going to go back to mine. I think it was Wave. I think Green Wave is the one I use for my database right here. By the way, this is another bonus tip for everyone. If you have more than one database, do yourself a big favor and set the themes on them to be different so that you know immediately as you're opening them up which database you're in. So I've saved my butt any number of times by having my main database be this, kind of fluorescent green color, because then if I'm doing like general work in ComicBase or I'm blowing away titles, things like that, I know I'm not blowing away the titles in my database. And similarly, if I'm like, entering, conditions and things like that, if the main database is, in our case, blue, I know that, I'm not just wasting my time entering something that's going to be, thrown away next time we push an update. So, but do help yourself keep things straight by giving all your databases different themes if you run more than one. Okay, let's see here. I was told there's punch and pie being served. What? Richard Scott, has there been a list of badges showing them all? Somebody on the forums put together a list which showed all but I think 2 of them. One of them is kind of secret. I want to say there's only like 1 or 2 people who've ever earned it. But yeah, somebody on the forum we thought was just an insane is compiled the list. Doesn't have direct access to our master picture store. The only time they ever talk to each other, even briefly, is if you have your own image of something and you scan it and and you say submit corrections. We say is it bigger than the one we've got? And so there's something on our backend server that checks the image on the backend server and says, well, our stock image right now is currently this pixel by this, so many other pixels, which obviously is changing all the time. And if so, it then says, well, yours is bigger. Can we have it? But no, there's no direct way to just see where the master database is at any given moment. In a way, we have the same problem you guys do, is that the pictures are only loosely coupled with even our master database. We only know what size they are when we one by one look at them. So they're not. There's something like, I don't know, 250 gigs of pictures, and increasing all the time. But yeah, there's not an easy integration for that. That said, if you want to just stay on the side of the angels and just be as awesome as you can be on this whole thing, best thing to do, scan your books at 300 DPI, full sized, and submit them in. And if it's a picture that we didn't have a big picture for before, you'll know it right away. So it's not something you want us to put in the database. You know that the one you're scanning is bigger. So there's that. Okay, let's see here. Let's see, buffering. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what's happening with the buffering. Sorry. Let's see how we're doing. 4:57. What was about time to wrap? All right, so guys, I think that's probably a good time for us to wrap it. No, things are sunny here. I've actually heard any number of YouTubers all day long have been complaining about buffering on their streams. It looked fine to me in the playback, but what happens when you stream? You're hitting what's called an RTMP server, which I don't know what that stands for. But basically, we're sending a lot of data to it. It then chomps on it and puts it out to you guys a couple seconds later. But if their servers get bogged down, even if the bandwidth is fine going to it, then you guys get choppy connections, or we could have a choppy bandwidth. But the connection seems pretty solid all day from here, so I'm assuming that Google's our YouTube's RTMP server starting to choke. So good time for us to sign out. Anyway, I'm going to, for once, do Greg's job for him, which he always does for me, which is remind everyone there is a forum in our forum postings to post new questions that we answer them on the next live stream. Thanks for everyone showing up on the whole thing. Like I say, hit like, go ahead and mash the like and subscribe button, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.